right, Bible AV34, 1 Kings 7-15. Okay, let's go back to here. So I had another copyright thing happen, so it just means the microphone is too close to my laptop's the mic speakers. So, all right, 1 Kings 7. Okay. 7-15. And it took Solomon 13 years to build his own house, until his whole house was completed. And he built the house of the forest of Lebanon, 100 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high, on 4 rows of cedar pillars, and there was cedar beams on the pillars. It was paneled above with cedar on the girders. Oh, hold on one second. I need to change this music to something a little more intense and repetitive. Let's do Max Effect Andromeda Galaxy Map. 2 hours. And let's turn that up. And let's turn that up. All right. All right. It was paneled above with cedar on the girders that rested on the pillars, numbered 45, with 15 to a row. There were 3 rows of framed windows, and each window was opposite another window in 3 tiers. All the entrances and the doorposts had square frames, as did the fronts of the windows that were opposite each other in 3 tiers. And he built the hall of pillars, 50 cubits long and 30 cubits wide, and there was a porch in front of it with pillars and a canopy. He also built the hall of the throne, where he would judge, the hall of judgment, and they paneled it with cedar from the floor to the rafters. The house where he was to live at the other courtyard was set back from the hall, and it was similar in workmanship. He also built a house similar to this hall for Pharaoh's daughter, whom Solomon had taken as a wife. All of these were made of expensive stones, hewn according to measure, trimmed with stone saws inside and out, and the foundation up to the coping, and outside as far as the great courtyard. And the foundation was laid with very large expensive stones, and some stones measured 10 cubits, and other stones 8 cubits. And above these were expensive stones, hewn according to measure, as well as cedar. Around the great courtyard were 3 rows of hewn stone and a row of cedar beams, like that for the inner courtyard of the house of Jehovah and the porch of the house. King Solomon sent for Hiram and brought him from Tyre. He was the son of a widow from the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a Tyrian coppersmith, and he had a great deal of understanding and experience for all kinds of work in copper. So he came to King Solomon and did all his work. He cast the 2 pillars of copper. Each pillar was 18 cubits high, and it took a measuring cord 12 cubits long to encircle each of the 2 pillars. And he made 2 capitals cast in copper to put in the tops of the pillars. One capital was 5 cubits high, and the other capital was 5 cubits high. The capital on top of each pillar had mesh network with wreath chains, 7 for the one capital and 7 for the other capital. And he made pomegranates in 2 rows around the one network to cover the capitals that were on the top of the pillars. He did the same for both capitals. The capitals on top of the pillars at the porch were of the lily pattern. Four cubits high. The capitals were on the 2 pillars, just above the rounded portion adjoining the network, and there were 200 pomegranates in rows all around each capital. He set up the pillars of the porch of the temple. He set up the right-hand pillar and named it Jachin, and then he set up the left-hand pillar and named it Boaz. And the top of the pillars were of a lily pattern, so the work of the pillars was completed. Then he made the sea of cast metal. It was circular in shape, 10 cubits from the brim to brim, and 5 cubits high, and it took a measuring line 30 cubits long to encircle it. And there were ornamental gourds below its brim, completely encircling it, 10 to a cubit all around the sea, with both rows of the gourds cast in one piece with it. It stood on 12 bulls, 3 facing north, 3 facing west, and 3 facing south, and 3 facing east, and the sea rested on them, and all their hindquarters were toward the center. And its thickness was a handbreadth, and its brim was made like a brim of a cup, like a lily blossom. It would hold 2,000 bath measures. Then he made the 10 carriages of copper. Each carriage was 4 cubits long, 4 cubits wide, and 3 cubits high. And this is how the carriages were constructed. They had side panels, and the side panels were between the crossbars, and on the side panels between the crossbars were lions, bulls, and cherubs. And on the same design was on the crossbars. Above, beneath the lions and the bulls were wreaths in relief. And each carriage had 4 copper wheels and copper axles, and its 4 corner pieces served as supports for them. Beneath the basin were the supports cast with wreaths at the side of each. Its opening was inside the crown, extending toward upward 1 cubit, and its opening was round, making up a stand of 1.5 cubits. And on its mouth were engravings. Side panels were square, not round. The 4 wheels were below the side panels, and the supports of the wheels were attached to the carriage, and the height of each wheel was 1.5 cubits. And the wheels were made like chariot wheels. Their support rims, spokes, and hubs were all of cast metal. There were 4 supports on the 4 corners of each carriage. Its supports were cast as part of the carriage. Its framing pieces and its side panels were cast as part of it. On the surfaces of its framing pieces and on its side panels he engraved cherubs, lions, and palm trees according to the amount of space on each, with wreaths all around. This is how he made the 10 carriages. They were all cast alike, with the same measures and shape. He made 10 copper basins. Each could hold 40 bath measures. Each basin measured 4 cubits. There was 1 basin for each of the 10 carriages. Then he put 5 carriages on the right side of the house and 5 on the left side of the house. And he placed the sea on the right side of the house toward the southeast. Hiram also made the basins, the shovels, and the bowls. So Hiram finished all the work that he did for King Solomon on the house of Jehovah. The 2 pillars and the bowl-shaped capitals that were on top of the 2 pillars, the 2 networks to cover the 2 bowl-shaped capitals that were on the top of the 2 pillars, 400 pomegranates for the 2 networks, 2 rows of pomegranates for each network, to cover the 2 bowl-shaped capitals that were on the 2 pillars, 10 carriages and 10 basins on the carriages, the sea and the 12 bowls beneath the sea, and the cans, the shovels, the bowls, and all the utensils which Hiram made of polished copper for King Solomon for the house of Jehovah. The king cast them in clay molds in the district of the Jordan between Succoth and Zarethan. Solomon left all the utensils unweighed because they were in such great quantities. The weight of the copper was not ascertained. Solomon made all the utensils for the house of Jehovah, the altar of gold, the gold table on which to put the showbread, the lampstand of pure gold, 5 on the right and 5 on the left before the innermost room, and the blossoms, the lamps, and the snuffers of gold, the basins, the extinguishers, the bowls, the cups, and the fire holders of pure gold, and the sockets for the doors of the inner house, that is, the most holy, and for the doors of the house of the temple of gold. So King Solomon completed all the work that he had to do for the house of Jehovah. Solomon then brought all the things that David his father had made holy, and he put the silver and the gold and the articles into the treasuries of the house of Jehovah. 1 Kings 8. At that time Solomon congregated the elders of Israel, all the heads of the tribes, the chieftains of the paternal houses of Israel. They came to King Solomon at Jerusalem to bring up the ark of the covenant of Jehovah from the city of David, that is Zion. All the men of Israel assembled before King Solomon at the festival in the month of Ethanim. that is, the 7th month. So all the elders of Israel came, and the priests lifted up the ark. They brought up the ark of Jehovah, the tent of meeting, and all the holy utensils that were in the tent. The priests and the Levites brought them up. King Solomon and the entire assembly of Israel, who had summoned to meet him with him, were before the ark. So many sheep and cattle were being sacrificed that they could not be counted or numbered. Then the priests brought the ark of the covenant of Jehovah to its place, into the innermost room of the house, the most holy, underneath the wings of the cherubs. Thus the wings of the cherubs were spread out over the place of the ark, so that the cherubs overshadowed the ark and its poles. The poles were so long that the tip of the poles were visible from the holy in front of the innermost room, but they were not visible from outside, and they are there to this day. There was nothing in the ark but the 2 stone tablets that Moses placed there at Horeb when Jehovah made a covenant with the people of Israel while they were coming out of the land of Egypt. When the priests came out from the holy place, the cloud filled the house of Jehovah. The priests were not able to stand to minister because of the cloud, for the glory of Jehovah filled the house of Jehovah. At that time Solomon said, Jehovah said he would reside in the thick gloom. I have successfully built a lofty house for you, an established place for you to dwell in forever. Then the king turned around and began to bless all the congregation of Israel, while all the congregation of Israel stood. He said, May Jehovah, the God of Israel, be praised, the one who by his own mouth promised by Father David. Ouch. Sorry. Pause. All right. Let's go. He said, May Jehovah, the God of Israel, be praised, the one who is by his own mouth promised by Father David, and by his own hand has given fulfillment, saying, From the day I brought my people Israel out of Egypt, I have not chosen a city out of all the tribes of Israel in which to build a house for my name to remain there. But I have chosen David to be over my people Israel. And it was the heart's desire of my father David to build a house for the name of Jehovah, the God of Israel. But Jehovah said to my father David, It was your heart's desire to build a house for my name, and you did well to desire this in your heart. However, you will not build the house. Oh, don't care. Hold on one second. That's better. Okay. Let's see. But I have chosen David to be over my people Israel. It was my heart's desire. My father David built a house for the name of Jehovah. But Jehovah said to my father David, It was your heart's desire to build a house for my name, and you did well to desire this in your heart. However, you will not build the house, but your own son, who is to be born to you, is the one who will build a house for my name. Jehovah has carried out the promise that he made. For I have succeeded my father David, and I sit on the throne of Israel, just as Jehovah promised. I have also built the house for the name of Jehovah, the God of Israel, and have set up a place there for the ark containing the covenant that Jehovah made with our forefathers when he was bringing them out of the land of Egypt. Then Solomon stood before the altar of Jehovah in front of all the congregation of Israel, and he spread his hands out to the heavens, and he said, O Jehovah, the God of Israel, there is no God like you, in the heavens above or on the earth beneath, keeping the covenant and showing loyal love to your servants who are walking before you with all their heart. You have kept the promise that you made to your servant David, my father. You made the promise with your own mouth, and this day you have fulfilled it with your own hand. And now, O Jehovah, the God of Israel, keep the promise you made to your servant David, my father, when you said, There will never fail to be a man of your line before me to sit on the throne of Israel. If only your sons will pay attention to their way by walking before me, just as you have walked before me. And now, O God of Israel, let the promise that you made to your servant David, my father, prove trustworthy, please. But will God really dwell on the earth? Look, the heavens, yes, the heaven of the heavens cannot contain you. How much less then this house that I have built? Now pay attention to the prayer of your servant and to his request for favor, O Jehovah my God, and listen to the cry for help and to the prayer that your servant is praying before you today. May your eyes be open toward this house night and day, toward the place of which you said, My name will be there. to listen to the prayer that your servant prays toward this place, and listen to your servant's request for favor, and to request by your people Israel that they pray toward this place. And may you hear from your dwelling place in the heavens. Yes, may you hear and forgive. When a man sins against his fellow man and is made to take an oath, and is brought under liability to the oath, and while under the oath he comes before your altar in this house, may you then hear from the heavens, and act and judge your servants by pronouncing the wicked one guilty, and bringing what he did on his own head, and by pronouncing the righteous one innocent, and rewarding him according to his own righteousness. When your people Israel are defeated by an enemy because they kept sinning against you, and they return to you and glorify your name, and pray and beg for favor in this house, may you then hear from the heavens, and forgive the sin of your people Israel, and bring them back to the lands that you have gave to their forefathers. When the heavens are shut up, and there is no rain, because they kept sinning against you, and they pray toward this place, and glorify your name, and turn back from their sin because you humbled them, may you then hear from the heavens, and forgive the sin of your servants, of your people Israel, for you will instruct them about the good way in which they should walk, and bring rain on your land that you gave to your people as an inheritance. If famine occurs in the land, or a pestilence, a scorching blight, mildew, swarming locusts, or voracious locusts, or if their enemy besieges them in any of the cities of the land, or if any other sort of plague or disease occurs, whatever prayer, whatever requests for favor may be made by any man or by all your people Israel, for each one knows the plague of his own heart, when they spread out their hands toward this house, then may you hear from the heavens, your dwelling place, and may you forgive and take action, and reward each one according to all his ways. For you know his heart. You alone truly know every human heart, so that they may fear you all the days they live on the land that you gave to our forefathers. Also concerning the foreigner who is not part of your people Israel, who comes from a distant land because of your name, for they will hear about your great name and your mighty hand and your outstretched arm, and he comes and prays toward this house. May you then listen from the heavens, your dwelling place, and do all that the foreigner asks of you, so that all the peoples of the earth may know that your name and fear you, as your people Israel do. And may you know that your name has been called on this house that I have built. If your people go to war against their enemy in the way that you have sent them, in the way that you send them, and they pray to Jehovah in the direction of the city that you have chosen, and toward the house that I have built for your name, then hear from them from the heavens their prayer and their request for favor, and execute judgment for them. If they sinned against you, for there is no man who does not sin, and you are furious with them, and you abandon them to an enemy, and their captors carry them captive, off captive to the land of the enemy, far or near, and they come to their senses in the land where they were carried off captive, and they return to you and beg you for favor in the lands of their captors, saying, "We have sinned and done wrong; we have acted wickedly." And they return to you with all their heart and all their soul in the land of their enemies, who carried them off captive, and they pray to you in the direction of their lands that you gave to their forefathers, and of the city that you have chosen, and the house that I have built for your name. Then hear from the heavens your dwelling place, their prayer, and their request for favor, and execute judgment for them. And forgive your people who have sinned against you, forgiving all their transgressions they committed against you. You will make them objects of pity before their captors, and they will pity them. For they are your people and your inheritance, whom you brought out of Egypt, from inside the iron smelting furnace. May your eyes be open to your servants' request for favor, and to the request for favor by your people Israel, by listening whenever they call to you. For you set them apart as your inheritance out of all the peoples of the earth, just as you declared through Moses, your servant, when you were bringing our forefathers out of Egypt, O sovereign Lord Jehovah. And as soon as Solomon finished offering to Jehovah this entire prayer and request for favor, he rose up from before the altar of Jehovah, where he had been kneeling with his hands spread out to the heavens. Then he stood and blessed all the congregation of Israel with a loud voice, saying, "Praise be Jehovah, who has given a resting place to his people Israel, just as he promised. Not one word of all his good promise that he made through Moses, his servant, has failed. May Jehovah our God be with us, just as he was with our forefathers. May he not abandon us or forsake us. May he draw our heart toward himself, to walk in his ways and to keep his commandments, his regulations, and his judgments, which he commanded our forefathers to observe. And may these words of mine, with which I have begged Jehovah for favor, be near to Jehovah our God by day and night, that he may execute judgment for his people and for his people Israel each day requires, so that all the peoples of the earth may know that Jehovah is the true God. There is no other. So let your heart be complete with Jehovah our God by walking in his regulations and by keeping his commandments as on this day. Now the king and all Israel with him offered a grand sacrifice before Jehovah. So, holy shit. Solomon offered the communion sacrifices to Jehovah. Ha! I didn't mean that. That's actually kind of a pun. But he offered 22,000 cattle and 120,000 sheep. That's fucking crazy. Thus the king and all the Israelites inaugurated the house of Jehovah. On that day, the king had to sanctify the middle of the courtyard that is before the house of Jehovah, for there he had to offer up burnt sacrifices, the grain offerings, and the fat pieces of the communion sacrifices, because the copper altar that is before Jehovah was too small to contain the burnt sacrifices, the grain offerings, and the fat pieces of the communion sacrifice. At that time, Solomon held the festival together with all Israel, a great congregation from Lebohamath down to the Wadi of Egypt, before Jehovah our God for 7 days, and then another 7 days, 14 in all. On the following day, he sent the people away, and they blessed the king, and they went to their homes rejoicing and feeling glad of heart over all the goodness that Jehovah had shown to David his servant and Israel his people. 1 Kings 9. As soon as Solomon had finished building the house of Jehovah, the house of the king, and everything Solomon desired to make, Jehovah appeared to Solomon a second time, just as he appeared to him in Gibeon. Jehovah said to him, I have heard your prayer and your request for favor that you made before me. I have sanctified this house that you built by permanently putting my name there, and my eyes and my heart will always be there. And you, if you walk before me as your father David walked, with integrity of heart and with uprightness by doing everything I have commanded you, and you obey my regulations and my judgments, then I will establish the throne of your kingdom over Israel forever, just as I promised your father David, saying, there will never fail to be a man of your line sitting on the throne of Israel. But if you and your sons turn away from me, from following me, and do not keep my commandments and my statutes that I have put before you, and you go and serve other gods and bow down to them, I will cut Israel off from the surface of the land, and I have given to them. And the house that I have sanctified for my name I will cast out of my sight, and Israel will become an object of scorn and a cause for ridicule among all the peoples, and this house will become heaps of ruins. Everyone passing by it will stare in amazement and will whistle and say, why did Jehovah do that to this land and this house? Then they will say, it was because they abandoned Jehovah their God, who had brought their forefathers out of the land of Egypt, and they embraced other gods and bowed down to them and served them. That is why Jehovah brought all this calamity on them. At the end of the 20 years, during which Solomon built the two houses, the house of Jehovah and the house of the king, Hiram the king of Tyre had supplied Solomon with cedar and juniper timbers, and with as much gold as he desired. And so King Solomon gave to Hiram 20 cities in the land of Galilee. So Hiram went out from Tyre to see the cities that Solomon had given him, but he was not satisfied with them. He said, what sort of cities are these that you have given me, my brother? So they came out to be called the land of Kabul, down to this day. In the meantime, Hiram sent to the king 120 talents of gold. This is the account of those who King Solomon conscripted for forced labor to build the house of Jehovah, his own house, the mound, the wall of Jerusalem, Hazor, Megiddo, Gezer. Pharaoh, king of Egypt, had come up and captured Gezer and burned it with fire. And he also killed the Canaanites dwelling in the city. So he gave it as a parting gift to his daughter, the wife of Solomon. Solomon built up Gezer, Lower Beth Horon, Baalath, and Tamar in the wilderness within the land, as well as all of Solomon's storage cities, the chariot cities, the cities for the horsemen, and whatever Solomon desired to build in Jerusalem, in Lebanon, and in the lands of his dominion. As for all the people who were left from the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, who were not part of the people of Israel, their descendants who were left in the land, those whom the Israelites had been unable to devote to destruction, were conscripted by Solomon for forced labor as slaves until this day. But Solomon did not make any of the Israelites slaves, for they were his warriors, servants, princes, adjutants, and the chiefs of his charioteers and horsemen. There were 550 chiefs of the deputies who were over the work of Solomon, the foremen over the people who were doing the work. Okay, pause for a sec. Just had a really interesting idea. So, one of the things that I realized is that things that are useful and should be. I'm trying to think. Things that are useful and lead to self growth should be adopted in as many different things as possible. So, like how a good scientific theory can encompass as many different ideas or concepts as possible. Same idea with this. So, I was thinking for a project that I can do um, for the Declaration of Independence and for the Constitution of the U.S. What I should do is create my own version as essays regarding myself. So the Declaration of Independence will be I declare that I can think for myself and that I'm fully capable of learning to fix all of my flaws, all of my noticeable flaws, at least the ones I'm aware of, and that I will work to that like true enlightenment is a form of sort of self-enslavement, that I accept certain ideas as true and that I have no way of forcing them to change, but by changing the way I interact with the outer world and the way I feel about it, I could change the way I interact with my inner world and the way I feel about it. Um, so what I'll do is I'll rewrite the Declaration and the Constitution, and then I will rewrite it in my own words, describing my own way of thinking, but relates to each of the, the Bill of Rights and all of that stuff. So this just sounded interesting. I think I'm on 24. All right, but Pharaoh's daughter came up from the city of David to her own house that he had built for her. Then he built the mound. 3 times a year, Solomon offered up burnt sacrifices and communion sacrifices on the altar that he had built for Jehovah, also making sacrificial smoke on the altar which was before Jehovah. So he completed the house. King Solomon also made a fleet of ships in Ezion Geber, which is by Eloth on the shore of the Red Sea in the land of Edom. Hiram sent his own servants with a fleet of ships, experienced seamen, to serve along with the servants of Solomon. They went to Ophir and took from there 420 talents of gold and brought it to King Solomon. All right, 1 Kings 10. Now the queen of Sheba heard the report about Solomon in connection with the name of Jehovah, so she came to test him with perplexing questions. She arrived in Jerusalem with a very impressive entourage, with camels carrying balsam oil and great quantities of gold and precious stones. She went in to Solomon and spoke to him about everything that was close. Uh-oh. I hate when that happens. All right, just reload it. Yeah, this is why I need to save up for another laptop, I think. I mean, I could do a factory reset on my main laptop. Actually, I think I should do that. I think I start doing recordings on that. I need to. It's okay. So tomorrow, I need to. Let's go ahead and write this down so I don't forget. All right. Pull that up. So 4. Actually, that's terrible. For tomorrow. So 10, 13, 1, 35, noodle meal dish. I'm going to do that for so I'm thinking maybe like 10 a.m. plus maybe 2 p.m. Yeah, so I'll go out, do some work till like 1. So I'll wake up, set up the cycler so that way I can just come home and get right on it. Then around noon to 2, I'll come home, set up the cycler or do the cycler by midday. And then while I'm doing that, I'll eat dinner. Um, and then plus VGGIS before bed. So 1 bag of frozen vegetables before bed just to kind of fill that up. So that's going to be, so it's $6.99 equals 7 times 5 is 35 minus 10 because it's on sale, 25. But I'd like to get it to 35. And then let's do 40 for gas. And then let's do 30 for case plus, actually, plus cables to make so I'm going to make that mobile. So once I have that, my plan is I'm going to record everything onto that, and once it fills up, then I can just upload everything at once. So I just like that sort of style. So what does that put me at? 35, 30, 65, 105. Okay. For let's do 50. No, 150. So this will just be in order. I need to get these done. For storage unit, 75. 40 for gas. 6. 4. 5 more bags. 7. 54. 8. 100 for bank. 9. And then 10, 40 for gas. So that's 35. Okay. So 35 times 1, 2, 3 plus 40 times 3 plus 175 times 1 plus 30 50 equals all right, let's add this up. All right, $535. Let's see how fast I can make that. I think I can do it in 2 days. All right. Yeah. Now that that's out of the way, let's unpause. JW. Where was I? Sometime after 7. So let's try 9. $10. I'm just gonna hit 10. I don't know if I finished 9 or not at all. Oh no, I didn't. Let's see. $20. Okay, I swear. Yeah, I don't remember reading this. So let's just do 1 Kings 10. Okay, now the queen of Sheba heard the report about Solomon in connection with the name of Jehovah, so she came to test him with perplexing questions. She arrived in Jerusalem with a very impressive entourage, with camels carrying balsam oil and great quantities of gold and precious stones. She went into Solomon and spoke to him about everything that was close to her heart. Solomon then answered all her questions. There was nothing too difficult for the king to explain to her. When the queen of Sheba had seen all the wisdom of Solomon, the house that he built, the food of his table, the seating of his servants, the table service of his waiters and their attire, his cupbearers and his burnt sacrifices that he regularly offered up at the house of Jehovah, she was left completely breathless. So she said to the king, "The report that I heard in my own land about your achievements and about your wisdom was true. But I did not put faith in the reports until I had come and seen it with my own eyes. And look, I had not been told the half. You have far surpassed the wisdom and prosperity, the report that I heard. Happy are your men, and happy are your servants who stand before you constantly, listening to your wisdom. May Jehovah your God be praised, who has taken pleasure in you by putting you on the throne of Israel. Because of Jehovah's everlasting love for Israel, he appointed you as king to administer justice and righteousness." Then she gave the king 120 talents of gold and a great amount of balsam oil, and precious stones. Never again was such a quantity of balsam oil brought in as what the queen of Sheba gave the King Solomon. Hiram's fleet of ships that carried gold from Ophir also brought from Ophir algum timbers in very great quantity and precious stones. The king made from the algum timbers supported for the house of Jehovah and for the king's house, as well as harps and stringed instruments for the singers. Such algum timbers have never again been brought in or seen down to this day. King Solomon also gave the Queen of Sheba whatever she desired and asked for, in addition to what he gave her out of his own generosity. After that, she left and returned to her own land, together with her servants. And the weight of the gold that came to Solomon in 1 year amounted to 666 talents of gold. Besides that, from the merchants and the profit of the traders, and from all the kings and the Arabs of the governors of the land. King Solomon made 200 large shields of alloyed gold. 600 shekels of gold went on each shield, and 300 bucklers of alloyed gold. 3 minas of gold went onto each buckler. Then the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. The king also made a great ivory throne and overlaid it with refined gold. There were 6 steps to the throne, and the throne had a round canopy behind it, and there were armrests on both sides of the seat, and 2 lions were standing beside the armrests. And there were 12 lions standing on the 6 steps, one at each end of the 6 steps. No other kingdom had made anything like it. All the drinking vessels of King Solomon were of pure gold, and all the utensils of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold. There was nothing made of silver, for silver was considered as nothing in the days of Solomon. For the king had a fleet of ships of Tarshish on the sea with Hiram's fleet. Once every 3 years, the fleet of ships of Tarshish would come loaded with gold and ivory, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. So King Solomon was greater than all the other kings of the earth in riches and wisdom, and people of all the earth sought an audience with Solomon to hear his wisdom that God had put in his heart. They would each bring a gift: articles of silver, articles of gold, garments, armor, balsam oil, horses, and mules, and this continued year after year. And Solomon kept accumulating chariots and horses. He had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horses, and he kept them stationed in the chariot cities and close by the king in Jerusalem. The king made the silver in Jerusalem as plentiful as the stones, and cedar wood as plentiful as the sycamore trees in the Shephelah. The horses of Solomon had been imported from Egypt, and the company of the king's merchants would obtain the horses in droves for one price. Each chariot imported from Egypt cost 600 silver pieces, and a horse cost 150. In turn, they would export them to all the kings of the Hittites and the kings of Syria. All right, 1 Kings 11. Put King Solomon, or sorry, but King Solomon loved many foreign women beside the daughters of Pharaoh: Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, Sidonian, and Hittite women. They were from the nations about whom Jehovah had said to the Israelites, "You must not go in among them, and they should not come in among you, for they will surely incline your heart to follow their gods." But Solomon clung to them and loved them. And he had 700 wives who were princesses and 300 concubines, and his wives gradually inclined his heart. In Solomon's old age, his wives inclined his heart to follow other gods, and his heart was not complete with Jehovah, his God, like the heart of David his father. And Solomon followed after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Milcom, the disgusting god of the Ammonites. And Solomon did what was bad in the eyes of Jehovah, and he did not follow Jehovah completely, as David his father had done. It was then that Solomon built a high place to Chemosh, the disgusting god of Moab, on the mountain in front of Jerusalem, and to Molech, the disgusting god of the Ammonites. And that was what he did for all the foreign wives who were making sacrificial smoke and sacrificing to their gods. Jehovah became furious at Solomon because his heart had inclined away from Jehovah, the God of Israel, who had appeared up to him twice, and had warned him about this very thing, that he should not go after other gods. But he did not obey what Jehovah had commanded. Jehovah now said to Solomon, "Because you have done this, and you have not kept the covenant and my statutes as I commanded you, I will surely rip the kingdom away from you, and I will give it to one of your servants. However, for the sake of your father David, I will not do it in your lifetime. I will rip it out of the hand of your son, but I will not rip away the entire kingdom. One tribe I will give to your son for the sake of David, my servant, and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen." Jehovah then raised up a resistor against Solomon, Hadad the Edomite of the royal family of Edom. When David defeated Edom, Joab, the chief of the army, went up to bury the slain, and he tried to strike down every male in Edom. For Joab and all Israel stayed there for 6 months until he had done away with every male in Edom. But Hadad fled with some of his father's Edomite servants, and they went to Egypt. Hadad was then a young boy, so they set out from Midian and came to Paran. They took men with him from Paran and came to Egypt to Pharaoh king of Egypt, who gave him a house, assigned him a food allowance, and gave him land. Hadad found favor in the eyes of Pharaoh, so much so that he gave him in marriage the sister of his own wife, Tahpenes. I have to say it that way. The queen. In time, the sister of Tahpenes bore him a son, Genubath, and Tahpenes, I hate this, brought him up in the house of Pharaoh, and Gebunath remained in the house of Pharaoh among the sons of Pharaoh. Hadad heard in Egypt that David had been laid to rest with his forefathers, and that Joab, the chief of his army, had died. So Hadad said to Pharaoh, "Send me away so that I may go to my own land." But Pharaoh said to him, "What have you lacked with me that you now seek to go to your own land?" To this he said, "Nothing, but please send me away." God also raised up against Solomon another resistor, Rezon, the son of Eliada, who had fled from his lord Hadadezer, the king of Zobah. He gathered men to himself and became chief of a marauder band. Then David defeated them. So they went to Damascus and settled there and began reigning in Damascus. And he became a resistor of Israel all the days of Solomon, adding to the harm done by Hadad. And he abhorred Israel while he reigned over Syria. And there was Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, an Ephraimite, from Zeradah, a servant of Solomon's, whose mother's name was Zeruiah, a widow. He too began to rebel against the king. This is why he rebelled against the king Solomon. The king Solomon had built the mount and had closed up the gap of the city of David his father. Now this Jeroboam was a capable man. When Solomon saw that the young man was a hard worker, he made him overseer over all the compulsory service of the house of Joseph. During that time, Jeroboam went from Jerusalem, and the prophet Ahijah the Shilonite found him on the road. Ahijah was wearing a new garment, and the two of them were by themselves in the field. Ahijah took hold of the new garment he was wearing and ripped it into 12 pieces. Then he said to Jeroboam, "Take 10 pieces for yourself, for this is what Jehovah the God of Israel says. Here I am ripping the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, and I will give you 10 tribes. But one tribe will remain his, for the sake of my servant David, and for the sake of Jerusalem, the city I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel. I will do this because they have left me, and are bowing down to Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, to Chemosh, the god of Moab, and to Milcom, the god of the Ammonites." And they have not walked in my ways by doing what is right in my eyes, and observing my statutes and my judgment as his father David did. But I will not take the entire kingdom out of his hand, and I will keep him as a chieftain for all days of his life, for the sake of David, my servant, whom I chose, because he obeyed my commandments and my statutes. But I will take the kingship out of the hand of his son and give it to you, that is, 10 tribes. To his son I will give one tribe, so that David, my servant, may always have a lamp before me in Jerusalem, the city that I have chosen for myself as the place to put my name. I will take you, and you will reign over all that you desire, and you will become king over Israel. And if you obey all that I command you, and walk in my ways, and do what is right in my eyes by obeying my statutes and my commandments, just as David, my servant, did, I will also be with you. I will build you a lasting house, just as I have built for David, and I will give you Israel. And I will humiliate the offspring of David because of this, but not always. So Solomon tried to put Jeroboam to death, but Jeroboam fled to Egypt, to Shishak, the king of Egypt, and he remained in Egypt until Solomon's death. As for the rest of their history of Solomon, all that he did in his wisdom, is it not written in the book of history of Solomon? The length of Solomon's reign in Jerusalem, overall, Israel, was 40 years. Then Solomon was laid to rest with his forefathers and was buried in the city of David his father, and his son Rehoboam became king in his place. 1 Kings 12. Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had come to Shechem to make him king. As soon as Jeroboam the son of Nebat heard of it, he was still in Egypt because he had run off on account of King Solomon and was living in Egypt. They sent for him. After that, Jeroboam and all the congregation of Israel came to Rehoboam and said, "Your father made our yoke harsh, but if you make the harsh service of our father easier and you lighten the heavy yoke he put on us, we will serve you." At this, he said to them, "Go away for 3 days, then return to me." So the people went away. King Rehoboam then consulted with the older man who had served his father Solomon while he was alive, saying, "What advice would you give on how to reply to his people?" They answered him, "If today you would become a servant to this people and submit to their request and give them a favorable answer, they will always be your servants." However, he rejected the advice that the older men gave him, and he consulted with the young men who had grown up with him and who were now his attendants. He asked them, "What advice do you offer on how we should reply to his people who have said to me, 'Make the yoke your father put on us lighter'?" The young men who had grown up with him said to him, "This is what you should say to this people who have said to you, 'Your father made our yoke heavy, but you should make it lighter for us.' This is what you should tell them. 'My little finger will be thicker than my father's hips. My father imposed a heavy yoke on you, but I will add to your yoke. My father punished you with whips, but I will punish you with scourges." Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam on the third day, just as the king had said, "Return to me on the third day." But the king answered the people harshly, rejecting the advice that the older men had given him. He spoke to them according to the advice of the young men, saying, "My father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father punished you with whips, but I will punish you with scourges." So the king did not listen to the people, for this turn of events was caused by Jehovah, in order to carry out the word of Jehovah had spoken through Ahijah the Shilonite to Jeroboam the son of Nebat. When all Israel saw that the king refused to listen to them, the people replied to the king, "What share do we have in David? We have no inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your gods, O Israel. Now look after your own house, O David." With that, Israel returned to their homes. But Rehoboam continued to reign over the Israelites living in the cities of Judah. Then King Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was in charge of those conscripted for forced labor, but all Israel stoned him to death. King Rehoboam managed to mount his chariot to flee to Jerusalem. And the Israelites have been in revolt against the house of David down to this day. As soon as all Israel heard that Jeroboam had returned, they summoned him to the assembly and made him king over all Israel. None of the people followed the house of David except the tribe of Judah. When Rehoboam arrived in Jerusalem, he immediately congregated all the house of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, 180,000 trained warriors to fight against the house of Israel in order to restore the kingship to Rehoboam the son of Solomon. Then the word of the true God came to Shemaiah, the man of the true God, saying, "Say to Rehoboam the son of Solomon, the king of Judah, and to all the house of Judah and Benjamin and the rest of the people, this is what Jehovah says. You must not go up and fight against your Israelite brothers. Each one of you must return to his house, for I have caused this to happen." So they obeyed the word of Jehovah and went back home as Jehovah had told them. Sorry, one sec. Grab a drink of water. Okay. Jeroboam then built up Shechem in the mountainous region of Ephraim and lived there. From there he went out and built up Penuel. Jeroboam said in his heart, "Now the kingdom will return to the house of David. If this people continues to go up to offer sacrifices at the house of Jehovah in Jerusalem, the heart of this people will also return to their lord, King of Rehoboam of Judah. Yes, they will kill me and return to King Rehoboam of Judah." After consultation, the king made 2 golden calves and said to the people, "It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here is your God, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." Then he placed one in Bethel, and the other he put in Dan. And this caused them to sin, and the people went as far as Dan to worship the one there. And he made houses of worship on the high places and appointed priests from the people in general, those who were not Levites. Oh. Jeroboam also established a festival in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month, like the festival in Judah. On the altar that he made at Bethel, he sacrificed to the calves he had made. And at Bethel, he assigned priests for the high places that he had made. And he began to make offerings on the altar that he had made on Bethel on the 15th day in the 8th month, in the month that he had devised on his own. And he established a festival for the people of Israel, and he ascended the altar to make offerings and sacrificial smoke. 1 Kings 13. By the word of Jehovah, a man of God came from Judah to Bethel while Jeroboam was standing by the altar to make sacrificial smoke. Then he called out against the altar by the word of Jehovah and said, O altar, altar, this is what Jehovah says. Look, a son named Josiah will be born in the house of David. He will sacrifice on you the priests of the high places, those making sacrificial smoke on you, and he will burn human bones on you. He gave a sign on that day, saying, This is the sign that Jehovah has declared. Look, the altar will be ripped apart, and the ashes that are on it will be spilled out. As soon as the king heard the word that the man of the true God had called out against the altar at Bethel, Jeroboam stretched out his hand from the altar and said, Seize him. Immediately the hand that he had stretched out against him dried up. He could not draw it back. Then the altar was ripped apart, and the ashes were spilled out from the altar according to the sign that the man of the true God had given by the word of Jehovah. The king now said to the man of the true God, Please beg for the favor of your Jehovah your God, and pray in my behalf that my hand may be restored to me. At this the man of the true God begged for the favor of Jehovah, and the king's hand was restored to its former condition. The king then said to the man of the true God, Come home with me and take some food, and let me give you a gift. But the man of the true God said to the king, Even if you gave me half your house, I would not come with you and eat bread or drink water in this place. For this is what I was commanded by the word of Jehovah. You must not eat bread or drink water. You must not return by the way you came. So he left by another way. And he did not return by the way he had come to Bethel. There was a certain old prophet dwelling in Bethel, and his sons came home and related to him all the things the man of the true God had done that day in Bethel, and the words he had spoken to the king. After they related to their father asked them, Which way did he go? So his sons showed him the way that the man of the true God from Judah had gone. He now said to his sons, Saddle the donkey for me. They saddled the donkey for him, and he mounted it. They followed the man of the true God and found him sitting under a big tree. Then he said to him, Are you the man of the true God who came from Judah? He replied, I am. He said to him, Come home with me and eat bread. But he said, I cannot go back with you or accept your invitation, nor may I eat bread or drink water with you in this place. For I was told by the word of Jehovah, You must not eat bread or drink water there. You must not return by the way you came. At this he said to him, I too am a prophet like you. And an angel told me by the word of Jehovah, Have him come back with you to your house so that he may eat bread and drink water. He deceived him. So he went back with him to eat bread and drink water in his house. While they were sitting at the table, the word of Jehovah came to the prophet who had brought him back. And he called to the man of the true God from Judah, saying, This is what Jehovah says. Because you rebelled against the order of Jehovah and did not keep the commandment that Jehovah your God gave you, but you went back to eat bread and drink water in the place about which you were told, Do not eat bread or drink water. Your dead body will not come into the tomb of your forefathers. After the man of the true God ate bread and drank, the old prophet saddled the donkey for the prophet whom he brought back. Then he got on his way, but a lion came across him on the road and killed him. His dead body was thrown onto the road, and the donkey stood beside it. The lion was also standing beside the dead body. There were men passing by who saw the dead body thrown onto the road, and the lion standing beside the dead body. They came in and told about it in the city where the old prophet lived. When the prophet who had brought him back from the road heard of it, he immediately said, It is the man of the true God who rebelled against the order of Jehovah. So Jehovah gave him over to the lion to maul and to kill him, according to the word of Jehovah that he spoke to him. And then said to his sons, Saddle the donkey for me. So they saddled it. Then he went on his way and found the dead body thrown onto the road, with the donkey and the lion standing beside it. The lion had not eaten the dead body, nor had it mauled the donkey. The prophet lifted up the dead body of the man of the true God and put him on the donkey, and he brought him back into his own city to mourn and bury him. So later he laid the dead body in his own tomb, and they kept crying out over him, Too bad, my brother. After burying him, he told his sons, When I die, you must bury me in the place where the man of the true God is buried. Lay my bones next to his bones. the word that he called out by the word of Jehovah against the altar in Bethel, and against all the houses of worship on the high places. And the cities of Samaria is sure to take place. Even after this happened, Jeroboam did not turn back from his bad way, but he kept appointing priests for the high places from the people in general. He would install as priests anyone who so desired, saying, "Let him become one of the priests for the high places." This sin on the part of the household of Jeroboam led to the destruction and annihilation from the face of the earth. At that time, Abijah, the son of Jeroboam, felt sick. So Jeroboam said to his wife, "Rise up, please, and disguise yourself so that they will not know that you are Jeroboam's wife, and go to Shiloh. Look, Ahijah the prophet is there. He is the one who spoke of me becoming king over this people. Take with you 10 loaves of bread, sprinkled cakes, and a flask of honey, and go with him. He will then tell you what is going to happen to the boy." Jeroboam's wife did what he said. She rose and went to Shiloh. Oh, I made a mistake. That's what ended up happening. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, that's 9. I make the mistakes here. 12 to 20. Oh, 13 to 20. I was reading that. I'm sorry. 7 to 15. Confused myself for a second. Okay. At that time, Abijah the son of Jeroboam fell sick. So Jeroboam said to his wife, "Rise up, please, and disguise yourself so that they will not know that you are Jeroboam's wife, and go to Shiloh. Look, Ahijah the prophet is there. He is the one who spoke of me becoming king over his people. Take with you 10 loaves of bread, sprinkled cakes, and a flask of honey, and go to him. He will then tell you what is going to happen to the boy." Jeroboam's wife did what he said. She rose up and went to Shiloh and came to the house of Ahijah. Ahijah's eyes stared straight ahead, and he could not see because of his age. But Jehovah had told Ahijah, "Here is the wife of Jeroboam coming to inquire of you regarding her son, for he is sick. I will tell you what to say to her. When she arrives, she will conceal her identity." As soon as Ahijah heard the sound of her footsteps as she was coming into the entrance, he said, "Come in, wife of Jeroboam. Why are you concealing your identity? I have been assigned to give you a harsh message. Go tell Jeroboam, this is what Jehovah the God of Israel says. I raised you up from among your people to make you a leader over my people Israel. Then I ripped the kingdom away from the house of David and gave it to you. But you have not become like my servant David, who kept my commandments and who walked with me after all his heart, doing only what was right in my eyes. But you have done worse than all those who were prior to you, and you made for yourself another god and metal images to offend me. And it is I whom you have turned your back on. For that reason, I am bringing calamity on the house of Jeroboam, and I will annihilate from Jeroboam every male, including the helpless and weak in Israel. And I will make a clean sweep of the house of Jeroboam, just as one clears away the dung until it is all gone. Anyone belonging to Jeroboam who dies in the city, the dogs will eat, and anyone who dies in the field, the birds of the heavens will eat, for Jehovah has spoken it. Okay. Now rise up, go to your house. When you set foot in the city, the child will die. All Israel will mourn him and bury him, for he alone of Jeroboam's family will be laid in a grave, because he is the only one of the house of Jeroboam in whom Jehovah the God of Israel has found something good. Jehovah will raise up for himself a king over Israel, who will do away with the house of Jeroboam from that day forward. Yes, even now. Jehovah will strike Israel down like a reed that sways in the water, and he will uproot Israel off this good land that he gave to their forefathers, and he will scatter them beyond the river, because they made their sacred poles, offending Jehovah. And he will abandon Israel because of the sins that Jeroboam has committed and has caused Israel to commit. At that, Jeroboam's wife rose up and went on her way and came to Tirzah. As she came to the threshold of the house, the boy died. So they buried. So they buried him, and all Israel mourned him, according to Jehovah's word that he had spoken through his servant Ahijah the prophet. And the rest of the history of Jeroboam how he waged war, and how he reigned is written in the book of history of the times of the kings of Israel. And the length of Jeroboam's reign was 22 years, after which he was laid to rest with his forefathers, and his son Nadab became king in his place. Meanwhile, Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, had become king in Judah. Rehoboam was 41 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 17 years in Jerusalem, the city that Jehovah had chosen out of all the tribes of Israel as the place to put his name. The name of Rehoboam's mother was Naamah the Ammonitess, and Judah was doing what was bad in the eyes of Jehovah. And by the sins they committed, they provoked him more than their forefathers had done. They too kept building for themselves high places, sacred pillars, and sacred poles on every high hill, and under every luxuriant tree. There were also male temple prostitutes in the land. They acted according to all the detestable things of the nations that Jehovah had driven out before the Israelites. In the 5th year of King Rehoboam, King Shishak of Egypt came up against Jerusalem. He took the treasures of the house of Jehovah and the treasures of the king's house. He took everything, including all the gold shields that Solomon had made. So King Rehoboam made copper shields to replace them, and he entrusted them to the chiefs of the guard, who guarded the entrance of the king's house. Whenever the king came to the house of Jehovah, the guards would carry them, and then they would return them to the guard chamber. And the rest of the history of Rehoboam, all that he did, is not written in the book of the history of the time. Is it not written in the book of the history of the times of the kings of Judah? There was constant warfare between Rehoboam and Jeroboam. Then Rehoboam was laid to rest with his forefathers and was buried with his forefathers in the city of David. His mother's name was Naamah and Ammonitess, and his son Abijam became king in his place. 1 Kings 15. In the 18th year of King Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, Abijam became king over Judah. He reigned for 3 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Maacah, the granddaughter of Abishalom. He went on walking in all the sins that his father committed prior to him, and his heart was not complete without Jehovah his God, like the heart of David his forefather. However, on account of David, Jehovah his God gave him a lamp in Jerusalem by raising up his son after him and keeping Jerusalem in existence. For David did what was right in the eyes of Jehovah, and he did not turn aside from anything that he had commanded him in all the days of his life, except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. And there was warfare between Rehoboam and Jeroboam all the days of his life. As for the rest of the history of Abijam, all that he did, is it not written in the book of the history of the times of the kings of Judah? There was also war between Abijam and Jeroboam. Then Abijam was also laid to rest with his forefathers, and they buried him in the city of David, and his son Asa became king in his place. In the 20th year of King Jeroboam of Israel, Asa began to reign over Judah. He reigned in Jerusalem for 41 years. His grandmother's name was Maacah, the granddaughter of Abishalom. Asa did what was right in the eyes of Jehovah, like David his forefather. He expelled the male temple prostitutes from the land and removed all the disgusting idols that his forefathers had made. He even removed Maacah, his grandmother, from her position as queen mother, because she had made an obscene idol for the worship of the sacred pole. Asa cut down her obscene idol and burned it in the Kidron Valley. But the high places were not removed. Nevertheless, Asa's heart was complete with Jehovah all his life, and he brought the things that he and his father had made holy into the house of Jehovah, silver, gold, and various utensils. There was constant warfare between Asa and Baasha, the king of Israel. So King Baasha of Israel came up against Judah and began to build up Ramah to prevent anyone from going out or coming into King Asa of Judah. At that, Asa took all the silver and the gold that were left in the treasuries of the house of Jehovah and the treasuries of the house of the king, and handed them over to his servants. King Asa then sent them to Benhadad, the son of Tabramon, the son of Hezion, the king of Syria, who was dwelling in Damascus, saying, "There is a treaty between me and you, and between my father and your father. I am sending you a gift of silver and gold. Come, break your treaty with King Baasha of Israel, so that he will withdraw from me." Benhadad listened to King Asa and sent the chiefs of his armies against the cities of Israel, and they struck down Yajon, Dan, Abel Beth Maacah, and Chinnereth, and all the land of Naphtali. When Baasha heard of it, he immediately quit building Ramah and continued dwelling in Tirzah. King Asa then summoned all Judah, No one was exempt, and they carried off the stones and timbers of Ramah and that Baasha had been building with. And with them, King Asa built up Geba in Benjamin and Mizpah. As for all the rest of history of Asa, all his mightiness and all that he did and the cities that he built, is it not written in the book of the history of the times of the kings of Judah? But in his old age he suffered from a disease in his feet. Then Asa was laid to rest with his forefathers, and was buried with them in the place in the city of David his forefather, and his son Jehoshaphat became king in his place. Nadab, the son of Jeroboam, became king over Israel in the second year of King Asa of Judah, and he reigned over Israel for 2 years. He kept doing what was bad in the eyes of Jehovah, and walked in the way of his father, and in his sin that he caused Israel to commit. Baasha, the son of Ahijah of the house of Issachar, conspired against him, and Baasha struck him down at Gibbethon, which belonged to the Philistines, while Nadab and all Israel were besieging Gibbethon. So Baasha put him to death in the 3rd year of King Asa of Judah, and became king in his place. And as soon as he became king, he struck down all the house of Jeroboam. He did not let remain anyone breathing who belonged to Jeroboam. He had them annihilated according to Jehovah's word that he had spoken through his servant Ahijah the Shilonite. This was because of the sins that Jeroboam had committed and had caused Israel to commit, because he had greatly offended Jehovah the God of Israel. As for the rest of the history of Nadab, all that he did, is it not written in the book of the history of the times of the kings of Israel? And there was constant warfare between Asa and King Baasha of Israel. In the 3rd year of King Asa of Judah, Baasha, the son of Ahijah, became king of Tirzah over all Israel, and reigned for 24 years. But he kept doing what was bad in the eyes of Jehovah, and he walked in a way of Jeroboam, and in his sin that he caused Israel to commit. And that's the end of AV34.